Hello, welcome to Voices in PR. I am Leona from Biocommunications. Today we have Amanda, director at Yellow Panda, to join us. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good question. So I used to have my first career was in real estate, and I always wanted to sort of break out of that. And I saw journalism first and foremost as something that I'd be interested in pursuing. And I wanted to actually be a TV host for a show over here in Australia called Getaway, which is a travel and lifestyle show. So, I mean, isn't that the most funnest job ever? But I remember being in a university lecture one day and someone was asked what their ideal job was, and literally the whole entire room put their hand up saying they wanted that job. So at that point, I realized, I think there's going to be a lot of competition for this. I don't think realistic career goal for me right now. And I guess the other thing was too with public relations as a difference to journalism, we know that public relations professionals do earn more and probably have more opportunity as well. And another reason why I didn't particularly want to be a journalist straight off the bat too is I was so terrified of ever having to go and do a death knock. So in Australia, that's all we talk about, having to go and speak to family members after they've lost a loved one. I just thought I can't be sent on that assignment, but it's a huge part of being a journalist. So I realized early on that I'd be better suited to being in PR and promotions and publicity and that sort of thing. So 6 months out of graduating from university, I actually met a member of parliament from our federal parliament, politician, and was offered a job interview for a media and communications role. How that came about is because I was spending, all of my free time volunteering around my university studies, getting my publicity experience up and running. So I was actually, that was noticed, and that's why I got that opportunity. So before even completing my degree, I had secured my first job, and I spent the next 12 months working in federal politics and finishing my degree. But I actually spent the next 6 years working in federal and state politics for a number of politicians, looking after their public image, helping them with all of their campaigning and that sort of thing. And yeah, I approach everything in my life wanting to do the best I can and excel at anything that I do. So it didn't take long before I was noticed, even in the media myself, as being a rising star of the federal government media team. But politics wasn't necessarily where I always wanted to be. It's just where I happened to get an opportunity, and I got some great experience out of it. But people always said with me, I can see you doing your own thing. Like you've got that entrepreneurial spirit. Like you really should go out and have a go at doing this for yourself. And we may go into some questions about it, so I won't ad lib anymore here, but I started my business, Yellow Panda, about 4.5 years ago, starting off as a freelancer, moving into consulting, getting too big, needing to get contractors to help me, and then starting the company officially as of January this year. Yeah, I love this question because it makes me reflect over my time in politics and look at some of the grassroots, like local community campaigns that we ran that were really successful. And I'll use an example of something that we're doing today with a client that's not even in politics to show the parallel between the two. But I came up with an idea for one of the local politicians I was working with to pull a team together that would be in charge of a revitalisation mission for a local town centre. And it was called Nerang 2020. The town was called Nerang. And the idea was to look at, if we got the city's best town planners, marketers, developers, politicians, people who make the decisions together on the one committee and sort of had a brainstorm around like, what can we do to revitalize the town, and came up with some key agenda items. From that, we were able to go and sort of, put this vision together for revitalizing a part of the riverfront, and had artist impressions. And, obviously it became a pitchable story to take to the media and say, hey, here's a collective mind of some of the city's, top thinkers. And this is what they see as a vision for transformation in this town centre. And here it is. And we got media coverage and that sort of thing out of it. But it was great because it was an actual tangible thing that, this committee met every month. So there was the stakeholder management side of it, the government lobbying side of it, as well as the publicity. And when I take that through to today to tell you about the modern day example I have of that, I have a client in Sydney. His name's Lee Rust. He is the director of Safety Line Jalousie. And we are supporting him in starting a movement around sustainable manufacturing in Australia, the Suppliers Declare movement. So it's very similar again, like he's got initial signatories that will come together. They'll come up with agenda items of how they want to, go out there and basically push this message and real tangible things and projects that they can be part of to actually drive real change. So that stuff to me has always been, it's great. It's great to be, like one of the little sort of wheels and the cogs behind masterminding some of those local grassroots campaigns that have legs, because they're legacy items too. They're things that you can keep adding to it. There's always stories that can come out of that. In PR, as anyone knows in PR, we need to have real things that people care about to talk about, and establishing a movement or a committee or having these visions is one way of doing that. The biggest difference, and one of the main reasons I left government, is that I had some really great ideas and creative ways of, doing some new things in the communications world. But in government, there are so many checks and balances that you have to go through, so many levels of authority and sign off that you need to obtain before you actually get the all clear to roll out a campaign strategy. And a lot of the time, opportunities are lost because it takes so long to get approval. So one of the biggest things I love about, working in this space with entrepreneurs is, like, most of the guys that I work with, they're really keen to be innovative and test out new things and, be guinea pigs like me, basically. So I think the biggest thing is that ability to be quite agile, quite innovative, and visionary, I guess. It's very stifled in government. You have to toe the party line, you have to toe the policy line. Like, it's very hard you're kind of kept in the tracks. And I really like to venture off and be very explorative in the way that I, work with the clients to try different things that might, get them the ultimate, awareness, which is what they're ultimately after. Yeah, it's a good question. I actually I'm a mentor. I'm part of a mentoring program here in Australia called the Rare Birds Mentoring Program. And so the government actually facilitates spaces to female entrepreneurs that need a little bit of mentorship and help. So they give them placements. My most recent mentee that I'm working with, I had my first session with her the other day, and she was saying, oh, I'm getting this business up off the ground. I've looked at PR, but I can't really afford, a few $1,000s a month. Like, it's a big risk to know whether or not it would pay off. And I said to her, why don't you just start writing content? Like, just start writing blogs, thought pieces, because she was in STEM, she was in engineering, like, she's already in a niche area where, like, she's got some really good, good credibility and good authority in that space. I'm like, start writing. I want you to write, 10 pitchable blogs, things that you would normally click on in your area. And then I want you to go and have a look at which publications are featuring that type of content, and who at those publications you would need to reach out to. So I more or less said, like, just start writing, just start creating your own content. That's something any business person can do starting out. It's what I've done. I've not spent 1 cent on marketing my business in 4.5 years. I've just promoted myself. I've put myself out there. I've done interviews. I've written opinion pieces. I've had them published. I've done blogs. I've obviously, grown my social media presence and that sort of thing too. So I would always say, start being the media yourself. Like, you can be the editor of own media organization, and that's how people should approach it. When you can afford to get a professional to do it, absolutely look at investing in that. I don't suggest that people handle their own PR forever, because it's just not realistic in the long term. There are so many other hats you wear as an entrepreneur. You can't be doing full-time PR for yourself and running a company. But to start with, absolutely just get writing. Well, first and foremost, I think PR is more important than ever. And I'll give you an example of right now. Right now, I'm at home in my home office because our country has 12 million people at stay-at-home orders currently. So that means that, the great networking event I was going to go to this Wednesday night for the Young Entrepreneur, the launch of the Young Entrepreneur Awards here in Australia, is not happening. So that's a great opportunity for me to go and meet, potential clients and also strengthen my relationships. So I won't be going there on Wednesday night, nor will many people be going out and meeting people face to face. So showing up online and, being credible online and being seen as a trusted authority is more important than ever. And PR obviously helps, do that, right? So when my clients, were initially rocked by the pandemic last March, I spoke to each of them before it happened and said, look, now is the time not to shrink back and disappear and cut your spend on PR. It's more important than ever that we keep you out there in front of everyone to show strength, to show that, you're still here, the business is doing well, people should still trust you, they should still do business with you and invest with you, because you're going to ride it out. Confidence is a huge thing. PR definitely helps with confidence. It helps with trust, credibility, the whole lot. Like you can't not have it. Everyone Googles everyone these day and age. If anyone's going to spend any full figures or over on any kind of product or service, they're going to do their homework. So if you're not showing up as someone online, that's an issue. And that's what PR predominantly is, right? Like forever, PR has been about building reputations. We're in the reputations game. If you're not building a reputation and you're not putting it out there, you're so far behind the eight ball. So in terms of the trends of where it's going, it's continuing to be, very important, but more so digitally. Like it's more so important to ensure that digitally you're getting good runs on the board, whether it be podcast interviews, online articles, that sort of thing, because you're creating this searchable, CV or resume online, right? When people put your name in, they should be able to click on news on Google and see boom, 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 boom. So, yeah.
Exactly. And also adding on your points, some trends that I've noticed here in New York, like a lot of people around me are talking about after the pandemic, especially, when people start to work from home, as people start to have their own time. So people can build actually person to person, like tea time, or virtual coffee time to build that kind of connection. It's kind of like, a new form of networking. It's kind of like still reaching out, but talk to different people, like one at a moment. And that's kind of like a quality connection that's happening a lot just during the working from home moment. Yep.
But actually, that just reminds me, it's a good point, actually. So one of the clients that joined me at the beginning of the pandemic, Tanya Abbey, she's from Black Wolf Consulting. She actually came across my profile during the pandemic because of all of the information I was putting out, right? And we just connected. That's what she was doing. Her strategy was just to reach out to people and say, hey, how are you doing? Like no business sell, no, just literally, how are you doing? And so she was very good at doing that. And then since, she's worked with me for, I think 14 or 15 months now, but over that first year, she came back to me towards the end of it and said, wow, like I didn't realize, the power of PR literally exposes me to hundreds of people that I would never be able to go after one by one and have those conversations, right? So it's like a time effective thing as well. So PR handles like this sort of higher level awareness sort of campaign that's running to like expose you to like millions of people in the publications that you're getting across. You still have to do your like little one by one networking and reach outs and that sort of thing, and like the tea time and that sort of thing as well. But you can see how PR just helps amplify that, and it's like such a good add-on to make sure that you've got all bases covered. Yeah, right. So it's a good question. I think in terms of how I frame that, it's more so that once we start working with a client, we're looking at the data each month to make sure that we're moving the right direction. But in terms of someone not having data or not even having, I guess, like a blueprint that kind of explains to them, the path to success, we do like to look at reverse engineering campaigns for similar businesses or people in similar industries and looking at, okay, so, it's very hard to sort of start any business in this day and age that hasn't already been started somewhere else or has a similar product or a similar space. So there's always going to be some sort of example you can go look at. So doing that competitor analysis and having a look at what of some of the other people have done is always a great way of trying to figure it out. But another thing is too, startups can always look to the the market leaders. And I'll use an example of a mobile phone repair, on-site demand mobile phone repair business that I did some work with, who were a startup. They came to me for an initial 3-month campaign. Obviously, Apple at the time were, the leading sort of repairer for Apple, phones, but they were currently going, at the time they were going through some court cases and stuff in Australia around the validity of people being able to get repairs done under warranty and that sort of thing. So Apple was very on the nose with consumers. They were very, very pissed off with them, basically. So here was a good opportunity and a good time for my client to come in and be the hero and offer this on-site, affordable service. And we pitched it to the national media as a David and Goliath battle. And we were very clever in the way that we actually prepared our hook, and our pitch was that this company were taking a bite out of Apple. So they were going after, Apple's consumers who were, disgruntled with the repair service, and as a result doing quite well. So that campaign actually ran nationally, and we picked up quite a lot of national media coverage. And for a startup, you couldn't have anything better. For a 3-month campaign, it was sensational.
That's amazing. In China, there is a traditional idiom in China saying to win a battle, you need to know your competitor. And it's kind of like your rival and yourself. So I think like for all of those business, like data is such an amazing perspective to get to know other business. And it's just out there waiting to be, explored, to be analyzed and understood. So totally agree with you.
And this day and age, everything we need to know is at our fingertips. You can go online and you can go deep down the rabbit hole and research and find out about anything that you want to. We are so lucky that we have the internet. The reason I've had such a good springboard into this career was because I did so much volunteer work. So my advice to any graduate is to start getting experience now. I mean, it's the first thing anyone asks on an interview, right? What experience do you have? And when I'm hiring, graduates or, people who have been through university, I'm looking for things on their resume that show that they go above and beyond, that show that they volunteer, that they give back, that they've been committed to academic excellence, that sort of thing. So, I know a lot of people will say like peers get degrees and people don't look at that sort of thing, but I do. I know as an employer in the PR industry, like I'm looking for people who are going above and beyond, and like volunteering and putting yourself out there and getting some runs on the board and some experience is so vital, because ultimately we want to hire people who have already been practicing realistically. And a lot of universities do have, internships as a big part of, like finishing that final year of study too. But even then, like you have to be selective around like what type of industry within, like what type of PR agency do you want to work with, like the industries that they focus on, because you want to make sure that your internship will line up with where you want to go, so you can use that experience for that particular niche area of PR. I say this all the time, the world has so much stuff, and content on social media is one of those things. It's like that saying, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And I think if you don't have anything relevant or of value to, the community or, the audience online at large, then don't put it out there. Wait till you have something that's actually, quite impactful, or it's going to help someone or engage someone. So that's my first thing. It's like, don't just like post stuff for the sake of posting. Like some people will just be put content out there all the time, and it's just gets lost. We're literally exposed to thousands of pieces of content a day. Secondary to that is that social media is not the be all and end all. Some people focus so much on social media. For one, you don't own your platform on social media. You're building a property on someone else's real estate. And we saw that in Australia, actually, when Facebook, banned a bunch of new sites from the platform a few months ago. It just reiterates the fact that you have to also have email lists, your own website, your own blog, that you're showing up in other places as well. And another thing I'll mention about social media is that it's more seen as like it's an additional mouthpiece or an additional microphone. So you want to use it to amplify the work that you're doing. So you want to use it to amplify those earned PR appearances and published articles that you're getting, to push that through your audience. A lot of people don't see that the opportunity to amplify what they're doing through social media. You've got to have a strategy, like social media is just not something that you just start throwing stuff around on. I mean, a lot of people do start that way. It is a way of testing to see what works, but they would probably be, my top 3 sort of tips with social media. Yeah. Don't run around copying all of the TikTok videos. Don't don't be like miming and lip syncing to like songs and doing crazy dances in your living room. Like each their own. Like some people, you know, they enjoy doing that and that works their market. But for me, I'm like, why do we all want to copy each other? And it's actually funny because Bethany Frankel in her interview recently on her podcast with Gary Vee, she said the same thing. She's like, I don't get TikTok. Everyone's just copying each other. Like, what's so original about that? You know, like I am such, and that's why I started my own business. Like I'm all for originality, like be you, do your own thing, you know, like create your own content. Don't be going around following everyone else. I actually made a joke about that. It's not work from home, it's live from work.
So true. Yeah.
And in terms of like work-life balance, like it's never perfect. It's too hard to ever have that, maintain that perfect balance. What I find, and you know, like I recently was doing really well. I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning. I was at the gym by 5. I was like working out. I would do journaling, meditation. I did like just have this amazing morning routine, you know, bouncing into the office by 9, feeling so great that I'd, you know, accomplished all of this stuff for myself. But you know, winter's kicked around now and it's darker and it's colder and I've just been tired. So I've been sleeping in. And yeah, I get mad at myself for not having that time to myself in the morning, and the days are shorter and I'm coming home in the dark and I'm feeling like all I do now is work and sleep. But for me, it's not linear, right? It's never even. But the work-life balance is recognizing to listen to my body and go, okay, so at the moment, I don't want to push myself to get up at 4:30 in the morning and do all of these things. Right now, I need to like rest and recuperate and just focus on the business. But there will come a time where I'll go back into that ultra discipline mode where I am actually kicking all my goals and living to a T. So I'm not consistent with work life, but I think over the long haul, when you look at like 12 months, like I will have really consistent runs and then I'll have more relaxed runs. And to me, that's what the balance is, right? It's about being able to be that ultra disciplined, routine based person, but then also be like, it's okay if I just like, if the wheels fall off for a little while and I just chill. So it's all like, yeah, that's how I approach it.
That will be all for today's Voices in PR. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us and sharing your stories with us. Voices in PR is a platform where we discuss relevant issues regarding PR and social media. We get insight from influencers and PR leaders on useful and trending topics. If you like this program or would like to share your thoughts, please let us know.